Bret Sergeant Hart, born July 2, 1957, is a Canadian-American retired professional wrestler. A member of the Hart wrestling family and a second-generation wrestler, he has an amateur wrestling background at Ernest Manning High School and Mount Royal College. A major international draw within professional wrestling, he is credited with changing the perception of mainstream North American professional wrestling in the early 1990s by bringing technical wrestling to the fore. He is widely regarded as one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. Sky Sports noted that his legacy is that of, one of, if not the greatest, to have ever graced the squared circle. For the majority of his career, he used the nickname, the Hitman. Hart joined his father Stu Hart's promotion Stampede Wrestling in 1976 as a referee and made his in-ring debut in 1978. He gained championship success during the 1980s and 1990s in the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, now WWE, where he helmed the Hart Foundation stable. He left for World Championship Wrestling, WCW, following the controversial Montreal Screwjob in November 1997, where he remained until October 2000. Having been inactive from in-ring competition since January 2000, owing to a December 1999 concussion, he officially retired in October 2000, shortly after his departure from the company. He returned to sporadic in-ring competition from 2010 to 2011 with WWE, where he won his final championship, headlined the 2010 SummerSlam event, and served as the general manager of Raw. Throughout his career, he headlined WrestleMania 9, X, and 12, and participated in the main event of Starrcade 1997 and 1999, as a special enforcer and referee in the former. He was inducted into the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame upon its inception in 1996, while still an active performer. Outside of wrestling, Hart has appeared in numerous films and television shows such as The Simpsons, as well as featuring in several documentaries, both about himself specifically and others about his family or the wrestling industry in general. He also helped found and lent his name to the major junior ice hockey team the Calgary Hitmen and has written 2 biographies along with a weekly column for the Calgary Sun for over a decade. After his retirement, he spent much of his time on charitable efforts concerning stroke recovery and cancer awareness, due to his experiences with the two. He who has a net worth of $7 million. Early life. The 8th child of wrestling patriarch Stu Hart and his wife Helen, Bret Hart was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada into the Hart wrestling family. He is of Greek descent through his maternal grandmother and of Irish descent through his maternal grandfather. His father was of Scottish, Irish and English ancestry. Hart is a dual citizen of Canada and the United States since his mother Helen was born in New York. Hart has stated that he considers himself to be North American and that he is equally proud of his U.S. and Canadian nationality. His maternal grandfather was long-distance runner Harry Smith. Hart grew up in a household with 11 siblings, 7 brothers Smith, Bruce, Keith, Wayne, Dean, Ross and Owen, as well as 4 sisters, Ellie, Georgia, Allison and Diana. As a child he was the closest with his older brother Dean, who was the nearest to him in age of all his older brothers, being 3 years his senior. Together they would often fight with Bret's 2 older sisters, Ellie, who was 2 years older, and Georgia, who was 1 year older. Hart's family were non-denominational Christians, but he and all of his siblings were baptized by a local Catholic priest. Hart spent the vast majority of his childhood in the Hart family mansion, which was owned by his father. During one period his father was housing a bear known as Terrible Ted chained under the building. The bear had had all of its teeth removed, and Hart would sometimes as a very young child let the bear lick ice cream off his toes since he thought it was a good way to keep them clean. Hart's first work in wrestling involved pulling out lucky numbers out of a metal box during intermission at the Stampede wrestling shows when he was 4 years old. When he got slightly older, he would sell programs to the shows, something all Hart's 7 brothers would do. He would often compete for customers with his little brother Ross, since the fans would often want to buy from the youngest Hart child. Personal life. Hart lent his nickname to the Calgary Hitmen of the Western Hockey League. He was a founder and part owner. On August 23, 2018, Hart was honored with a traditional Naitsitapi naming ceremony and named Courageous Chief by Siksika Elder Miksikaam. The ceremony was done as recognition for his and his father Stu Hart's cultural relationship-building contributions, such as promoting interest of the sport of amateur wrestling among Indigenous youth throughout Western Canada. Family. Hart married Julie Smadu, born March 25, 1960, on July 8, 1982. They have 4 children. The 4 hearts located on the right thigh of his tights symbolize his children, as do the 4 dots following his signature. Julie's sister Michelle was married to Tom Billington from 1982 to 1991. Bret and Julie separated in May 1998, and after several brief reunions over the next 4 years, eventually divorced on June 24, 2002, just hours before Hart had his stroke. Hart married an Italian woman named Cinzia Rota on September 15, 2004, but they divorced in 2007 after failing to agree on where they should live. He married Stephanie Washington, an African-American woman several decades his junior, in 2010, although at first his children were wary of their new stepmother, they have since embraced her as they realized that despite their differences in age, the love between her and their father is deep and genuine. His 7 brothers were either wrestlers or involved backstage with the wrestling business. His 4 sisters all married professional wrestlers. 2 of his brothers-in-law, Davey Boy Smith and Jim Neidhart, had successful careers in the business. His youngest brother, Owen Hart, had become a decorated wrestler in his own right before his death in 1999, caused by an accident at the WWF pay-per-view Over the Edge. Hart's niece Natalia is a professional wrestler. Fellow pro wrestler Roddy Piper claimed in his autobiography to be a cousin of Hart. Hart has also stated that Piper was the only wrestler to visit him in the hospital after his stroke. Health problems. On June 24, 2002, Hart had a stroke after hitting his head in a bicycle accident. The Calgary Herald reported that Hart hit a pothole, flew over the handlebars of the bike, and landed on the back of his head. Hart developed total paralysis on his left side, which required months of physical therapy. Hart has since recovered much of his mobility and is in good health, although he has had other lasting effects common to stroke survivors, such as emotional imbalance. Hart wrote in detail about his stroke in his autobiography, Hitman, My Real Life in the Cartoon World of Wrestling. Hart later became a spokesperson for March of Dimes Canada's Stroke Recovery Canada program. While recovering from his stroke, Hart would train 3 days a week at B.J.'s gym in Calgary, which was owned by his brother-in-law B.J. Annis. On February 1, 2016, Hart announced through a Facebook post that he had been diagnosed with prostate cancer. Jim Ross claimed on March 2, 2016, that Hart had beaten the disease following successful surgery and that it appeared not to have spread to other areas of his body. Hart responded to Jim Ross' comments through Facebook saying that although the surgery was a success and that he and his doctors were optimistic, he would continue to be monitored every 3 months by doctors until he can actually be cancer-free.